historic social change is we're going from a white majority democracy to a white minority, truly multiracial democracy. In 1990, 77% of Americans were non-Hispanic white. Today, that number is 61%. In about 10, 12 years, that number will be 50, 49%. We are going through the period, the transition period. It's about 20 years. It started about 10 years ago, and that corresponds with the rise of Donald Trump and also the virulent opposition to Donald Trump. And that also corresponds with the rise of this period I call the era of violent populism in America. And that era of violent populism is unfortunately likely to be with us for a number of years. Because yes, Donald Trump is a cause, but he's also a symptom of this era that we're going through. And it's not simply a matter of this one a lead or that one a lead or this election or that election. Things have been getting worse steadily as we are going through this historic transition to a genuinely multiracial democracy. And that is enormous social change, bigger social change than the 1960s.
If this demographic shift is playing out, and if it's one of the reasons that people are feeling so anxious, you know, I can understand why it feeds into this racist idea of the great replacement theory, right? And I'm wondering whether the subset of the population whose greatest anxieties are about being replaced, if you will, are those people more likely to want political violence than people who might see the pattern but don't subscribe to it as strictly.
Inside of our body politic today, as I just told you, there are 6% of Americans that support the use of force to restore Donald Trump, and they also heavily believe in that great replacement conspiracy theory, as you just said. However, the other 8% are also supporting violence against Trump. And the way to think about this is that you have a portion on the right who wants to slow down or reverse this transition to a multiracial democracy, and you have a portion on the left that want to continue and accelerate that shift for fear it will never happen. You see, the left is responding to the rise of Trump. And it's responding in not just like, well, it's okay if he wins, we're just gonna, no, it's responding in quite serious ways that we have not seen in our lifetimes. And the reason is because the fear is if Trump wins, this will actually keep minorities as second-class citizens pretty much forever. And that is a daunting prospect for many people on the left. Now, the risk of violence is greater on the right, although we have seen violence on the left. The reason it's greater is because of Donald Trump. He has demonstrated that he is willing and will stoke violence to egg on a mob to seize the Capitol, to stop the certification of an election that goes against him. No other political leader in our history, nearly 250-year history, ever did that. So there is essentially combustible material. So Hari, you can think of political violence as like a wildfire. You need combustible material. That's how we know we're in wildfire season. We can measure the changing size of dry combustible material and measure it quite scientifically. But what we can't measure scientifically are the triggers, because those are unexpected lightning strikes or campfires left unattended or cigar butts thrown out of a window. Well, in the case of political violence, those triggers are someone like Donald Trump, who's actually triggering and setting off and igniting that combustible material. And the most extreme case, of course, was on January 6th, where he brought that combustible material to Washington, D.C., and then he threw matches right into that crowd to ignite them against the Capitol. And then once they were in the Capitol, he ignited them further to attack his own vice president, Mike Pence. So we're in a wildfire season. The most dangerous triggers are on the right. But we just need to recognize it is a wildfire season where there are combustible material on both sides.
To carry this analogy further, if I go to a national park, we have an infrastructure in place where there's a sign that says wildfire season, wildfire risk, extreme, high, low, right? I mean, it's sort of out in the open, we understand it. But we don't necessarily seem to have that sort of infrastructure built into our conversation. What can we do in the political system to create a vehicle for not just these opinions to be shared, but then to gather weight?
We know that incendiary rhetoric can be a trigger on that combustible material, but calming rhetoric is the water that can help calm down the fire. Well, where that calming rhetoric should come from is our senior political leaders. And what that would look like is senior leaders would say all political violence, not just violence by the other side, but all political violence is illegal, immoral, and anti-American.